Welcome to the Cynthia Nyamai show. We are so glad that you could join us. Now, during the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of parents were forced to become teachers and their homes became classrooms. And I saw a lot of discussions, especially on social media, where parents were discovering how naughty their children are in class or rude and so many other terms. But could there be an underlying issue? Because a lot of times children who are facing learning challenges get such terms or called by such terms. How can you tell the difference between a child with behavior issues or a child with a learning disability? That is the discussion for today, coming up shortly. Welcome, Kaimuri Njeru, for joining us. And I have to give a disclaimer. We were schoolmates. We went to school together. We were neighbors, grew up together. So if I'm too easy on you, people will understand why. And talking about school, what has been your experience when it comes to schooling and education?
So, first, thanks for having me in the show.
You're welcome.
It's a privilege to be here. Schooling, I mean, for me was pretty easy in the first 5 years or so.
Should we tell people what numbers we were?
Do we tell our numbers? Oh, my high school numbers were horrible. And that's why I'm sitting here.
Yes.
We used to be 137 in the class.
Yeah.
I used to be top 7 from the back, which was, but primary school was very easy for us because I think we really got good foundations at Kaimuri Christian. And then now, when I went to boarding school, I was an average student in boarding school. And that owed to the fact that I'd already learned how to learn from the foundations. Then now, hell broke loose in high school. So in high school, I mean, it was just lecturing methods, and we had to read big books. We were introducing big words. So when it comes to learning disabilities, yes, people can find out what they are when the children are young. But if the child copes and gets into a high school like we did, then now when you get to middle school and high school, when the workload changes, now the learning process for us becomes different, and we don't cope, and nobody knows. So it's easy to think that that child was lazy, or they don't.
Or it's teenage,
or it's teenage, they're rebellious.
And boys,
And honestly, when I used to go to class, everything just used to pass. So I used to entertain myself in my own way, like I wrote illegal school magazines, music fest. I was always in the bus. I mean, that school bus never left me. So that's how I coped in high school. Then in the last term of Form 4, when the teachers were on strike, that's when I discovered, hey, by the way, when these other kids discuss the stuff they learned, I could pretty pick a lot of the stuff that they learned over the 4 years. And that's how we got into
So you learned what method works for you?
That's when I learned that discussions work for me when they're applying the content, the context of whatever they had learned. So I discovered that works for me. So that's how I made it through Form 4. But from Form 1 to Form 4, pretty much got straight Ds.
And then later on, you became a parent. So did you also experience the same with your children?
Definitely. Let me just go back a little. I discovered dyslexia when I was 19 because I went for pre-university. And that's for 9 months, and that's when they tested us. And somebody told me this is called dyslexia. I'm like, I can't even pronounce the word. So what are we talking about? So fast forward. Would you believe I studied journalism? You remember we also went to uni together.
Exactly.
And when I was writing news, my editor quickly discovered that I knew how to pick really good stories, but my writing and the spelling was horrible. So he kept telling me, "Kuka, you do this. When you go for an interview, just write the hard words, and I can let you know what that was." Because he discovered that I couldn't read through the long press releases and briefs. So one day, I have to say this story, I was walking from one of the interviews just near National Theatre, and I saw this board written, Usiko, then there was a space, Joe Harper. Usiko Joe? So, of course, enthusiastic me, picked my notebook, wrote the name, because that spelling on that painting, the small space there, did it for me. I could not understand what it was. So the whole sentence didn't make sense. And that's how dyslexia works. So I went back to my editor. Of course, you can imagine how pissed off he was. Like, quite excited. And I wasn't pretending.
Yes.
I couldn't understand.
Wow.
That's what happens to the brain when you miss one letter.
Yes.
So yes, as a parent, I have a son who has ADHD and dyslexia. So he's as hyper as I am.
Yes.
And really, I homeschooled him for a better part to just even shield him from the normal learning environment. Then I took him to school, regular school, 2 years ago. Yes. And it's been a struggle. Open an exam. I'm not the kind of parents that gives people, my kids never do holiday homework. Yes. Even if you give it to me and even if the president brought it to me, I wouldn't be like, no, don't. My kids don't do holiday homework. Yes. So when he opens schools, he always does very poorly in his open exam. And like we get 26% in Kiswahili. Yes. And then we get 96 in the closing exam. Because now what happens in between, that's when I teach him. So he picks whatever he's taught in class and we have to review it at home. At least he gets the discipline. He asked for 1 hour of preps. I didn't think an 11-year-old would ask for that, but that's how we've been coping. Yes. But I think I've just switched back to homeschooling for purposes of coping. Yes. Yeah.
And so with your experience, how would you define learning disability?
So learning disabilities, initially we were told it's the 5-year-old boy who is very hyper and will outgrow it, and that's what they call ADHD. Then dyslexia is reading disability. And then we have dysgraphia, which is also difficulties with math and understanding math concepts. Yes. We also have dyscalculia. No, dysgraphia, sorry, is a handwriting. Okay. Because it's a graph. Just trying to fit words within a certain space. Dyscalculia is mathematics problems.
And it's that one, most of us are
Actually, I was talking to someone yesterday and they're like, oh yeah, you know, actually, I think this dyscalculia thing shouldn't be a disability. Everybody is disabled in math. I thank God for calculators, actually. So, and then we have dyspraxia that has to do with space, and maybe the kind of kids you'll find that are a bit clumsy, and we always think that we all want them to be tidy, but they can't. So let me explain dyslexia, some of the symptoms you see in class. Difficulties in reading words fluently. So, and you can imagine a lot of the learning that happens in our classroom is based on hearing and reading of words. So if the child reads one letter wrongly, as I explained with my Usiko Joe story, the whole sentence does not make sense. Then the whole paragraph and the whole concept is not understood. But for you to be diagnosed with a learning disability, it means you already have an IQ that's above average. It's high and to high, to above, it's average to high. So basically, it means it's a sharp child who missed a letter in a paragraph and the whole concept didn't make sense. So, and that's difficult. So they read slowly. If they're copying notes, we read a letter at a time, not a word at a time. Let me not say they, because I'm one of them. We read a letter at a time, not a word at a time. And then even how those words combine is difficult for us to understand. So when we are younger, because we repeat words so many times, we learn using rote memory. So as guys memorize, and you can cope in primary school. I mean, 844. We knew how to eliminate. I did well in exams because I knew how to eliminate. Now, when you get to high school, where application is required and new words are introduced, now that whole learning process becomes hard. So for math, it's the same. The child cannot understand math concepts. They don't understand how numbers interact with each other. Some don't even understand the value of numbers. Wow. So you can imagine, by the time you start giving a child a formula, they don't even understand 5 is 5, why 5 is 5. It's very difficult for that child. So the dysgraphia, again, we know that when you learn handwriting, it helps develop the brain. And that's why you're taught how to write. So now that child can't write notes that are even legible to themselves. They combine capital letters and small letters. Even in schools where they've introduced cursive, they mix cursive and print. So by the time you look at that child's work, and you can imagine it's perfect work that impresses a lot of the teachers. And we've faced the brunt of it. I was forced to write with my right hand when it was broken and I was left-handed. So we know those things that were done when we were young to force us, to drill us to do some things. I still write like an 8-year-old. And when I write notes for my kids, he gets beaten up in school for it. I was like, why did this child copy? So that's dysgraphia. The handwriting is very bad. So now there's dyspraxia, where now the child can't coordinate things,
Yes.
cannot take more than one instruction. So you can imagine, and those are the kids in our class. They are so when you're giving them, you're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. The child lost you at 1.
Yeah.
And so they are even really trying really hard to accomplish the skills that you give them on the first rule.
Yes.
Then ADHD. I love ADHD because it's just a hyperness that you are told about hyperness.
Yes.
But the other side of ADHD is that you find a child who seesaws from being very happy to very low.
Wow.
So we deal with a lot of anxiety in between because you have the fear of being found out for your weakness. So what happens with ADHD? There's a professor who says for a person with ADHD to accomplish a task, it's like doing a marathon with a bag of cement on your back. That's how laborious it is.
Yes.
So basically with ADHD, it's the doing part of your brain that does not communicate with the knowing part.
Yes.
So the knowing part, you know everything. If someone you go for an interview, they'll talk and give you all the things that they need to do, but the implementation of it becomes very difficult.
Yes.
So look at those things in a classroom. It's very hard. So 70% of children with ADHD, with dyslexia, or these other, they're called specific learning disabilities because they're away from the physical disabilities, have ADHD.
Yes.
So the child is dealing with emotional issues and they are still dealing with learning issues.
Yes.
And then you can imagine being called a mjinga by your classmates. You can imagine the pain of just going back home with the poor grades. And so what needs to change is the learning styles.
Yes.
The other statistic maybe I need to share is that 1 in every 5 kids in our classrooms has a learning disability.
Yes.
So you can imagine we are talking about 5 million children in Kenya have learning disabilities right now.
Yes.
We are talking of 140 million in Africa. Now, if you go to the global scale, it becomes ridiculous.
Yes.
And what happens to children with learning disabilities? One day, if they are not, if of course they are not in an environment that encompasses them, because again, teachers do not know.
Yes.
Because 80% of our teachers are the ones that go to teachers training college, especially in primary schools.
Yes,
And you for the teachers training college that even our government absorbs people into, they take them with C- and B's.
Yeah.
So it's the same struggling kids who are coming back to use the same skills that were used on them to teach your children. So the cycle, it becomes vicious.
Yes.
Another thing you probably notice is that, so that same teacher comes and repeats those things. Then the child now, what happens in Africa? Kids start dropping out of school.
Yeah.
The child is so discouraged. Let me give you maybe the global perspective. In the US, 70% of children in juvenile have learning disabilities.
Yes.
So and it's because they were very sharp kids. This is how they know how to learn. Their brains operate at a very high level, but really, the system stamps them out.
Yes.
So they become creative and get into crime.
Yeah.
In the same America, 40% of self-built billionaires have dyslexia.
Yeah. Richard Branson from the UK. Yes. I want to get into more of those details because perhaps if maybe Richard Branson was born in Africa, he would be someone completely...
He'll be a matatu tout.
different. And I also want to find out how can we test our children. But we'll have to take a short break for that. Yes. When we come back, how can you tell if your child has a learning disability? Coming up. Welcome back. Today we are talking about learning disabilities and we have a specialist. She's a specialist in terms of she's gone through it and also one of her children, and she's trying to find solutions for this nation when it comes to learning disabilities. Thank you very much once again, Kuka, for joining us. You are sharing with us interesting statistics just before the break and a comparison of the US and Kenya.
Yes, I was just mentioning that in the US, 70% of the kids in juvenile have learning disabilities and mostly dyslexia. Same US, 40% of their self-made billionaires
Yes.
have learning disabilities. And so it just shows how the education system
Yes.
can stamp you out.
Yes.
The self-made billionaires maybe will help me explain the gifts of the learning disabilities.
Yes.
Because people think, oh, I think I've spoken to tons of parents who call me and tell me, oh, Kuka, my child has dyslexia, I discovered you have ADHD.
Yes.
And it looks like a life sentence for them.
Yes, but
And
even before we go to the gift, there's something interesting you said, even with how children sometimes will relate to numbers or even their concentration. And a lot of times we box children into one box and begin to say things like, oh, this one doesn't want to learn how to read, they're being naughty. What are some of the challenges that you see our society puts on those children?
And thanks for bringing me back again. You know I have ADHD. If you don't stop me, I'll just go. One thing you need to know about learning disabilities, it's a brain structure difference.
Yes.
It has nothing to do with character.
So it doesn't mean, yes, exactly. It has nothing to do with character,
the child's character.
And also IQ.
And IQ.
It's just they're structured different.
For you, because there's a condition called intellectual disability, also known as Down syndrome. Now, for you to be diagnosed with a learning disability, you need to rule out Down syndrome first, or intellectual disability. So basically, if you are still experiencing these learning challenges and you don't have a physical disability that is making you be unable to do this, or an intellectual disability, it means, now if you've ruled out those two, then it means your IQ is average or above average, you're smart. And that's when, so if you still have a high IQ and continue to experience problems in learning, that's when they are considered to be learning disabilities or specific learning disabilities. So now, when it comes to cultural, because people don't know, and I know there's very little research that has been done in Africa. I know Europe and the US have done some research and have interventions that also, again, have not even helped the entire classroom there. So there's no research for Africa, so we use estimates based on what we see in other European countries. Now, our teachers don't know. And so when you are taught about how a child should behave and you give someone work, they don't do it, and you ask a child a question. By the way, there's one of the learning disabilities has to do with hearing of spoken word. So can you imagine, you have lectured and lectured and lectured, then you ask a child a question and then you go like, huh?
And you're thinking they're daydreaming.
And you thought they were not interested. Or you give, now again, I said a child with ADHD works, and they will not do it until you scream. Because again, ADHD has a cycle of, the child cannot, the delivery is really hard. Then they now adrenaline has to go really high, so that when they feel like it's a deadline that's gonna kill them, that's when they can hyper focus. So you can imagine a child who is going through those things, and they are in the brain, brain chemicals that are controlling that. It becomes very, very difficult. So the teacher will of course see it as laziness, will of course see it as just being destructive in class. The noisemakers, I mean, you know, when I was in primary school and high school, the prefects used to come, write the date on their books.
And start with
my name.
It's an obvious, you'd be there.
We were a few known ones. They will start with and it's just a way of just trying to engage yourselves. Let me now, if a child even has ADHD, even if a fly passes, you won't believe it. The child will move from what you are talking about and follow the fly under the chair and start thinking about flying like that fly, so you'll see them now fly. And they left your class a long time ago. So the attention is very little for children with learning disability. There is also anxiety because of being found out, low self-esteem because of what they've been told for a long time. And just poor performance in the classrooms. But there are things, normal things that can be done. Like, I love that the CBC is trying to be inclusive in how they're teaching, but it's being delivered by teachers who have never learned inclusivity. So you can imagine simple things like changing the teaching styles in class. We'll do it. So you can imagine it's the teacher needs to just apply different learning styles. The song, theater, music, multisensory learning. If you combine a lot of things in the classroom in one lesson, the child learns. Let me give you an example of Sunday school. I think I've been a Sunday school teacher for a long time. And they got it right. The teacher starts a memory verse. No, we start with the introduction of the last class. Then we read the word of God. Then we watch a video. We will sing a song. We will play games. We will use a memory verse using activities. We'll have a craft paper. By the time that child leaves, they've interacted with the same text in 7 different ways.
Wow.
So, and it's so easy to rope that in our class, and that's what will be inclusive. And then other simple things like, for languages, let the child read for themselves because you're testing their reading ability.
Yes.
But if it comes to subjects like science, social studies, if the teacher can read the question, because you're not testing the child's reading ability here, you're testing their understanding,
yes,
the child will be able to write the answers. And then even for sciences, if they've written the answer and you can figure out that that's the right answer, even if it's spelled in Kikuyu, really, the child understood the concept.
Exactly.
So if those things, those accommodations were put in place, they would really, really be helpful.
Yes.
And those are the things we are hoping, that's what we are hoping to do as an organization.
Yes.
To teach teachers, to teach differently, so we are called learning differently. And then, and also to probably create a pool of activities they can pick from our platform and make classes inclusive.
Yes.
Yes.
With your experiences with teachers and the system that we have in Kenya, and maybe even we can go wider in Africa, are teachers taught how to see those symptoms? Can they quickly tell that, you know, this is not a character issue, this might be a disability?
No. Not yet, and I think that's the gap you're hoping to bridge.
Yes.
The teachers who are joining Teachers Training College now, at least I know KICD has organized for them to start learning about learning disabilities, and they're including that in their curriculums. But the teachers in practice now do not have enough tools and do not know. So basically, as I mentioned earlier, same teachers who went through the very stressful education have come back to use the same stressful methods to continue. So so that's what we're doing. We're going to be offering a free course for teachers. Let them come and interact with the learning disabilities and the coping methods.
And once you suspect that, you know, a child has these symptoms, is there a way then to test and find out, and how affordable is it?
Assessments are expensive. For you to test for learning disabilities, you have to follow a number of steps. First, again, I said you have to rule out physical disability. So that's one test. Then you have to rule out intellectual disability. So an intelligence test has to be done. That's another test, cost about 15,000. Then now the test for learning disabilities is about 65,000. So, and very few people are licensed to do that. So, but my thinking is, if I ask you about the symptoms of corona, I am sure you know all of them. Does that make you a doctor?
No.
So if we create awareness on what the symptoms of learning disabilities are, and then the parents and the teachers can appreciate that my children has this badge and they could have this condition, and then these styles of teaching could work for them, that would work better. So that's why we want to be in the awareness space first.
Yes. And you are talking about gifting, that sometimes people think, you know, children with a disability, that's it, they're completely lost, but they actually have gifts that you mentioned earlier. What are some of those gifts in your experience that you've seen?
I love that God balances us out. Now, let me start with the gifts of dyslexia, and then move to an ADHD, and we can look at those. Again, I said it's a brain structure difference. And there are 4 theories that have explained what the brain structures are. And so they put down the gifts into the acronym MIND, M-I-N-D. So the M is for material reasoning. And so the child is able, or the person actually with the learning disability, is able to connect a lot of things and understand concepts at a bigger, it's called the big picture. So you can imagine you're in a class, you're teaching a child K for cat. The child's understanding level is the types of cats in the world, what diseases affects them and stuff. You see that how far the brain has moved. So that's how children with dyslexia are. They see the big picture image. If you show them a concept, they can see the vision far away, and so that's one of the gifts. That's material. Then there's the interpersonal reasoning, the gift, we know how to connect people. So our heads are spaghetti heads.
Yes.
So if I'm dealing with something here, even if you ask me about what you do, I can probably give you 5 people who help you.
Yeah.
We are the people who know a guy.
Yeah.
So it is, even in terms, what has made Richard Branson successful, I know I've mentioned this before, is his ability to connect the right people to his jobs.
Yeah, I've met him, and it feels like you.
I want to meet him, please. I really want to, because I was really inspired by him.
Yeah, it feels like when I met him, it felt like we'd known each other for like all our lives. We could easily connect. You never know. I'm learning a few things.
I know you're taking mental notes, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And and you can never get it in you don't learn those skills in any school.
Yes.
They are gifts that God gives you.
Yeah.
So N is for narrative reasoning. Believe it or not, we are very good writers, in spite of having difficulties to learn language. So so that is fantastic. We have guys who work in poetry, in theater, in music, in the arts. Yeah. So that's where it is, because we write and create, narrative reasoning. And D is, I think I've forgotten what the D is, but it has to do with, it's dynamic reasoning. Okay. It's a gift you find in architects. That architect, they connect many things together and put concepts together. So remember, the interpersonal was for people who connect also concepts and put them together. Yeah. And architects also have the big picture image. Yeah. So you can imagine careers like medicine, psychology, are where we flourish completely. Yes. Yes.
So maybe in the system, there are children who lost, who would be having great careers right now.
Have you ever seen matatu touts?
Yeah.
Have you ever been to a matatu place and you find those touts, you find a tout that's talking so eloquently, they are telling stories, they are connecting things they've read about who, or they've watched videos about who, because for my son, when he comes home, he doesn't read nothing. We YouTube everything that he does. And that guy is so knowledgeable, because once he hears something or sees something, he can build that concept. We have definitely lost
actually
the best brains.
Some of the best conversations I've ever had with people, and I enjoy using matatus now, not as much, but matatus, cab drivers, those are some of the best conversations I've ever had.
Even your Shamba boys.
Yes.
The Shamba boy can tell you a concept, you're like, how did this guy become so knowledgeable?
And then sometimes in my head, I think, they should have gone to school, they should have received education, but maybe even that education is what killed,
is what killed their brains. Is what, so yes, we've lost, and we keep losing very brilliant people to this. So we do not want to, the reason we are doing this is we do not want to have the juvenile statistics in Africa. We want to change the juvenile statistics into the Richard Branson stories, so that I mean, even Bill Gates is believed to have a learning disability. Tom Cruise, Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, if we could nurture those things early, teach children differently, and test them differently also. Even how we deliver language teaching is also different. How did your mom teach you your mother tongue? She didn't teach you the parts of the sentence.
That's true.
She spoke it to you. Yes. And then later, and who wants to know the parts of our sentences in Kimeru or Kikamba? Really. And that, and we've used the same technique to teach some missionaries Kiswahili. Yes. You speak the language to them first, and you speak to them for about 11 sessions. Yeah. And then on the 12th session, that's when they start talking, and they've already mastered the words. Wow. So that's how even language should be approached. So it's delivery of, even if we change our curriculums for 10 years, if the delivery is still the same old relic way of teaching, we're going to be losing a lot of people in the system.
Yes, we've talked about school and teachers and that system, but also how should we change parenting?
There you go. Again, the lesson is free for parents and teachers. Yes. Parenting is also acceptance of your child. That it's not a death sentence, you've gotten a gift. Yes. And if we changed how we look at those children, it will be it will build the hope of a child. Yes. And because, look at the careers I said that we are good in: engineering, medicine, psychology, journalism, even PR, whatever we do, because you have to connect. Media, there are so many careers. I think of a list of more than 100 that we really flourish in. Yeah. But if we apply the normal teaching styles, we don't flourish. So if a parent can understand the child's learning ability, and and help them learn that way. So also for parents, we pray that they also understand the learning disabilities. Because I was talking to a parent, you wouldn't believe it, whose child was diagnosed with dyslexia and was taken to a special ed school. Our children are not supposed to be going to special ed school. So he was dumped in the same class with a child who has autism, a child who has intellectual disability. So do you know what this sharp child did? He thought for him to fit in, he has to lower his standards. He lost his. There are parents who've taken kids to such expensive schools, but they have the same teachers with the same little knowledge about learning disabilities. So parents are punishing themselves trying to get. And you know, by the way, I asked that parent, weren't you like that in school? Because it's passed on. You know my dad, I'm exactly like dad. I'm hyper, I talk loudly, I get so tired when I'm done with people. So I have a son who is exactly like me. And so it's passed on genetically. So you ask that parent, is it you or your wife who has that problem? If you survived and if you understood that you can use these other skills to help your child survive, then really, you're just saying your child doesn't learn using reading. Reading catches up, by the way. It catches up with time. But yeah, use other styles of learning. And we have like 14 other styles.
And as a society, because a lot of times, even in our Kenyan society, if you have the papers, if you're a doctor, and that's why people go for careers like that, then you're somebody in the society. We value people based on what we think is IQ and their education. How should we, what kind of shift do we need to take as a society?
As a society, let me ask you, the workplace. I worked with you in the media. You stayed on. You have the staying on power. I held 70. After that time, I've held another 16 jobs. And what happens, we panic because we think we'll be found out. And with society, it's good to know, even in HR, that these are the gifts these people are bringing in. And they are many and they're amazing. And I hope once we are done educating parents, we can educate employers about the need to rope in children, even with different learning. I hate that the term is disability.
I think it's a wrong term. Now that you are explaining it to me.
With different learning abilities, because they bring in a different way of thinking. Let me give you an example, strategy. Honestly, if you're working in strategy, I think a lot of people we find in media are like me have. The people we find in strategy, they have to think in so many concepts that the regular learner without disability, learning the different learning ability doesn't have. Do you know that those straight and narrow learners? And if you introduce a word in English, they will just follow how the teacher taught it. But if you introduce that word to me, I will have a million methods to use it. So you can imagine, look at those. If you're working in a place for emergency, if you're working in even international media, you need people, because some of us are really calm when it's burning. Us guys are thinking, okay, it's a fire. We don't go like, fire, fire. So basically, I can see the gifts to make the teams dynamic. I think the people who've coped the most with even COVID, we as guys are used to drama, so basically, fine, I'm not going to an office, fine, I'll work from home, shifts careers. And those are really good, by the way, gifts to have, so that you can move with the flow. And so in society also has to be educated on, this is not a dumb child. This is a sharp child who doesn't like your books. They're in black and white and they are boring. So please give me something that works for me. And so even colors, actually I was reading up on what even kind of fonts that you can use, and they are out there. If those, and there are small changes that can be used. Can you imagine a child with dyslexia has to take an exam in a black and white paper? And it's not even white, bright white. You know that the newsprint quality paper. That paper is so boring for the child, they've already failed the exam. And those are some of the things that work. So that are against us. So even society needs to be educated so that they know it's not a dumb child. Don't hide them, and don't keep correcting them in front of people. And as a parent, I even find myself doing that sometimes because of the standards of what life should be. So I'm also talking to me.
You're also learning as you're talking.
Accept and empower as your child as they are.
Could we probably have a different word than, disability?
I call it learning differently. In fact, I said, because we'll brand that so much, that's what I call my company. Because I'm like, learning differently, then I'll make it a household name so that let's know it's different way of learning.
Yeah.
Yes, and again, I say it's easy as being dynamic like a Sunday school teacher.
Yes, yes. Yeah. How can one reach you? I think I'm learning so much. I still want more notes, but how can one reach you or your organization?
So we are launching our platform. It will be www.learningdifferently.info.
Yes.
The .coms had already gone.
Yeah.
But then also we have different platforms. Learning Differently Africa on Facebook. Learning Differently on the gram.
Yes.
I'm still trying to learn how to use Twitter well.
Yes.
I can't catch up with it. Moves so fast. I'm like, okay, fine.
Yeah.
But those two platforms are there. But and then we'll be doing a lot of campaigns, and you could be hearing about us. Yes. But those platforms are enough. At least I check them personally, so I know we can reach us. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Kuka is what I grew up calling it.
Yes, it's the one I love.
Kuka Kaimuri Njeru for joining us today.
And thanks for having me.
Thank you. I have learned so much today, and I'm almost embarrassed that I call people who learn differently as learning disability. And every day we are learning. And from today, I think I will no longer say learning disability. It is just people who learn differently. And it's important that we begin to embrace each other with our differences. Thank you for joining us today. See you next time.